We got Ryan Reaves to come in and fight against everybody, get all kinds of penalty minutes, but he hasn't really had to yet. Everybody's so afraid of him. It's almost like the trade chip worked, so hopefully that keeps up. Let's go.
It's St. Paul, Minnesota! It's the matchup between your Minnesota Wild and the Anaheim Ducks! Introducing first, starting in the forward position, Marcus Daboon Foligno! Jordan Green!
It's pretty hard to not be inspired by that. A little Reaves yelling in your face. I mean, he's a big man with quite a bit of character. You think he's been some inspiration behind some of these wins lately?
I was waiting for him to call O'Brien and Gisselson, and I think you and I would have galloped down to the rink. But no, I mean, I think that's a great little tradition where they have a player read out the starting lineups. And when it's Ryan Reaves, he's a new voice. He's an impending figure. I think it's great. I mean, it's rah-rah. And, you know, where I get skeptical sometimes is how long does that last? If things are going well, what's that voice sound like? It sounds great. If things aren't going well, it's like, not him again. I don't have anything against him. And, in fact, I knew you were going to ask me at some point where you think I'm at with my Ryan Reaves trade grade. And I think I said it's too early to tell on our last podcast. Let's just say I'm trending in a positive direction. And I'm reminded they've won 4 or 5 games with him in the lineup. And yes, he's got a few points, a couple of big points, but what I know he's doing when I talk to the hockey ops staff and when I talk to my contacts, I'm just saying that guys like yesterday in Dallas, Jamie Benn, he's not trash talking, he's not running any of our little guys. They're not. So Ryan Reaves' effect is large and in charge, and it's producing not only 4 out of 5 wins for the Minnesota Wild, it's producing things that you and I and most of hockey don't see. And that's that big tough guys on the other end of the other side of the rink aren't taking the liberties they once did. And I think, Cole, while I'm at it, you're seeing guys like Marcus Foligno, and who's been reunited with the Grief line here, with Ecker and Greenway. Now they're getting points. We've talked about secondary scoring a lot on the podcast. But if Mike Foligno doesn't have to be totally exclusively an enforcer, he's returning to the offense. He knows that Ryan Reaves is there. So it's win-win-win across the board, and I suspect the next time you talk to me, I'll probably be 2 thumbs up on the Ryan Reaves trade, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, there's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that people aren't seeing. I know myself, I was at the Edmonton Oilers game last week, and between periods, while it was commercial break, Reaves was screaming at the Oilers bench. I thought, oh, there's no doubt. That was between the first and second period. That was headed to resurfacing, and I'm like, there is no doubt there's going to be a fight. But, hey, we still haven't seen a Ryan Reaves fight. He's held back. Guys are scared of him. They're not trying to fight with him. They don't want to do anything to piss our team off. They don't want to have to face Mr. Reaves, and I do not blame them.
They know how the let's face it, I think they know how the movie ends. Not many people pick fights with Ryan Reaves. He's the big deterrent, and he's the big enforcer. And if the less he fights, the better. But his presence never goes away, and those are the benefits that the Wild and Bill Guerin and the staff knew that they were going to get with somebody like him. You know why? Because everybody in the world has played against him on the other team, and that's when players mind their P's and Q's a lot more than they do when he's not on your team.
And maybe I can take a little bit of credit because I've been pointing out the penalties here. Maybe the staff has been watching our videos, but the penalty minutes against on the Wild, man, they are continuing to rise. So I think they're just all these teams are just trying to find little cheap ways to still go after us. Because I think, I have it pulled up here actually, we lead the NHL in penalty minutes against by an insane number. Stand by and I'll find. It's 342 penalty minutes against, and the second closest team to us is the Flyers with 295. So no one else even over 300. So we have 50 minutes of penalties against us, which maybe that's why we're leading the league in shorty goals, because we've got 50 minutes more experience on the ice during games than everyone else. But hey, I'll take a shorty goal if we get the opportunity.
Yeah,
Dewar had a big one the other day.
Yeah, he sure did. And that stat continues to amaze me. And it's also a stat that continues to remind me that it's no it's nothing you really want to totally lead the league in and hope for Hollywood endings and shorthanded goals and good things coming out of it. I'm sure it's still driving everybody bat bat bleep crazy.
Yeah.
That's involved on the coaching side of things and the hockey app side of things. But the other thing with the penalties and the penalties against and the penalties for, you're not going to. You're not going to see the penalties with Orion Reaves. We're getting back to Reaves here. You're not going to see the liberties taken, so maybe some of that will naturally go down because no one's going to want to do-si-do with too many people with Reaves in green.
Right, and especially with a lot of these young guys. I mean, I don't care who you are. When you first get in the league, if you got a guy that's trying to pick a fight with you, you got a guy who's trash-talking you, I'm sure that's got to get in your head mentally and make things tough, so having a guy like Ryan Reaves on your team to have your back, that's got to make a difference for some of these young guys out there.
Yeah, and I'm sure people that watch our podcast think I'm kind of like skeptical or hard on him or anything like that.
No,
Obviously, I've been amazed at some of his offensive skills. So he's got the ability to play a third, fourth line, and he's got the ability to contribute offensively. But again, it's the X factor and the muscle and the policing that he brings to the table that makes him such an impact player right now, and hopefully that impact continues. And by all indications, it will.
You kind of feel like everybody who's going to come up from Iowa is already here this season. I know we've got a lot of rookies on the team, or are there still guys that we're going to see? Are they keeping an eye down in Des Moines?
Well, for sure. I mean, there's arguably a handful of Minnesota, Iowa Wild guys in Minnesota already. Based on the little bit from last year down in Iowa and now up. But I know Bill Guerin was in Des Moines on Sunday while his team was doing what it was doing in Dallas, watching American Hockey League game Iowa Wild versus Chicago Wolves, and namely Marco Rossi, who, as everyone knows now, was sent back down to the American Hockey League from the NHL. If I was to go, maybe not so out on a long dock anymore on this prediction, Sammy Walker. And the reason I say Sammy Walker is not only is he a former Gopher and a Edina native, he's the leading goal scorer in the American Hockey League right now, and he plays for the Iowa Wild. So I'm sure Mr. Guerin was keeping a little tabs not only on Rossi, but Sammy Walker down there, who plays a beautiful game. He's a right-handed, offensive-minded forward who's an excellent distributor, passes the puck well, but also scores goals. So many goals that he leads his team right now in goals in that department in Iowa. So Sammy Walker would be the guy to keep an eye on, Cole, as a possible next one. They did bring up Joseph Cramarosa for this three-game Western road trip, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver, but I think that's more of a need to fill on some other injuries and some other players that they're going to find out if they're ready or not in the road. So, if you go Cramarosa, Dewar, Addison, Shaw, Rossi, possibly Sammy Walker, those are big numbers from your American Hockey League affiliate.
Yeah, for sure. And would you count Steel in that list too, or was he otherwise?
No, but I'm glad you brought him up. I mean, Sam Steel never played in Des Moines, but I know that Sam Steel, I know he was -3 yesterday in Dallas, but I know for a fact, just having some conversations tonight, that they're very pleased with Sam Steele's role as finally a legitimate and a number one line center. He's played well, he's contributing, and I know that he's doing everything they ask of him right now. So, we talk about trade so much. If Steele's not producing, are they going to go after a free agent center so they can get another center back in here with Rossi back in Des Moines and this and that? But I know that right now this coaching staff is very pleased with Sammy Steele's efforts and night ins and nights out lately.
Yeah, he seems like an absolute hustler on the ice. He goes hard. He does what he's got to do. He's in the right place at the right time, making the passes where he's got to be. He's still got some things he can work on in his game, like everybody. But I mean, he's really been a bright spot for the Wild for sure. And you mentioned trades, and Steele being one of these people who mentioned too. Like, his deal expires next year. We have 9 guys with deals expiring next year, and according to CapFriendly.com, the Wild are projected to have $15.5 million in cap space leading into next season. That takes into account the up in cap space by about $1 million too. But 9 guys. Do you see if we're in the playoff picture? Are we gonna move to bring in some guys that could maybe even add to that cap for next year? Are you looking for guys long term? What kind of trades? I
Yeah,
know it's
I
far away. It's not till March for the trade deadline, but what would you be looking for?
Well, based on the information you just provided, and it's great information, and Capology is Capology. You mentioned Sam Steel. He's not played well enough to me this year to garner much of anything in terms of a trade. The guy that obviously is no secret to the trade block right now is Matt Dumba.
Yep.
They have to re-sign him for next year for big, big dollars. And based on his season so far, and I love Matt Dumba, but man, he's really off his game and off of access right now, and they could really use him to do what he's done as recently as last year. I don't know if it's injuries. I don't know what the situation is, if it's matchups, whatever, this and that. But Matt Dumba would be the guy that for sure could be traded well even before a trade deadline this year. And then that cap that you talked about, that $15.5 million, is trending in the right direction. I would totally expect if they feel like they needed somebody up front in terms of a centerman for a possible playoff run this year, they're going to find a rental player, somebody who doesn't count against the cap next year, somebody that they're just going to have to assume for 1 year,
Yep.
and then that person's a free agent, or if that person's good enough and likes it here, you can negotiate and try to do what you do with so many of those rental players that, for the most part, go away after the
Right.
need, so to speak.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it seems like times have changed in professional sports a bit, at least, baseball, football. Some of these trades that people are making, like we just traded for Hawkinson, right? Or for the Vikings, or the Twins traded for Molly. They're trading for guys who right now have small cap space, but they have a contract already set for the next 2-3 years. So I think maybe they potentially go after a centerman that they can fill that role and not have to go out and negotiate in free agency and deal with that. But you don't trade a guy like Boldy, right? You wouldn't trade guys like Addison. You're not.
No.
Would you trade Gustafson and bring up either McIntyre or maybe our guy Jesper down there in Iowa? Is that an option?
That's always an option, and I'm sure that's the ultimate plan. How soon that happens, who knows? But if you
Yep.
start talking about cap space here with maturing stuff from the Suter and Parisi, with a possible Matt Dumba moving on. To your point, you're not going to be trading your core guys that are under contract. You're going to be looking for players that, how about a guy like Brock Faber? Brock Faber could
Yep.
be. I know we've talked about him on the podcast quite a bit. He seems to be now, based on the information I'm hearing, a guy that could probably step right in and play defense. Well, then Dumba's immediately expendable, or a Kalen
Right.
Addison. This is just totally projections. Is a tradable guy with a coming off a great season for a center, or that's all speculation. I'm not saying to do it, but I'm also saying that
Yep.
that's how it works. And but yeah, we'll talk about trades every day on the Sportscast, and every day will be different, but on the podcast. But
Yep.
yeah, who knows? Who knows, right?
Yeah, and we're still a ways out. The trade deadline, I think, is March 3rd this year, I believe. It's still plenty of time to see what happens, because
Yeah.
you're not going to make these trades now. You're going to wait, see how things unfold. You've talked a lot about, let's see where we are at Christmas. Let's see what the team's looking like around the holidays. How are you
Yeah.
feeling we're going to be looking around the holidays with the last,
Yeah.
we've had a pretty good week last week. Is it going to come down to this away home,
Yeah.
Was it the home stand? Is it the away stand? What's going to make the difference for the front
Yeah,
office?
and to be real transparent, I just hate flat out talking about trade rumors, because these are people's livelihoods, and I've always
Yeah.
been that way, and that's old school. But I'm not even saying it's right, because I know it's more and more a part of the game. But like, when you take a look at people's livelihoods and you're talking about their futures or lack of a future, it's always been a little tough. But
Right,
all you need to
for
really
sure.
do is follow the money, right, Cole? Who
Yep.
who could go that's going to get you somebody, or who could go that's going to save you cap space? And you don't even have to really name names. You can just look at financials on that.
Yeah, and so many speculations around Dumba too. We love Dumba. I love Dumba, but it all
Yeah,
comes down to the numbers. It comes down to what you need on the team and how you're going to get to a championship. And if, as good of a human being and as awesome as a person that Dumba is, he may not be the role that's going to fit into 2023. So I agree with you there. Trade rumors are tough. I know the Twins have lately speculated. Some people said they might trade Luis Ariz, and it's like the fan base would go crazy. But hey, would you rather have a championship, or do you want to have these guys that you love? Take your
This
pick.
is the double-edged sword. It's a
Yep.
total double-edged sword, and it's not only a double-edged. It's not like the front offices in baseball, basketball, hockey, or football take great pride in this, because a lot of times, more so than anybody even knows, they love the players that they're trading, but it just ain't in the cards, and it just ain't happening in today's world of economics.
Yep, for sure. And we'll talk about it. We'll speculate all we can, and when things actually happen, then we'll dive in deep. But we'll be there. So make sure you follow Hot Dish Sports. We'll be tweeting it out. We'll make sure we follow any kind of trade rumors. Like, subscribe to this video, subscribe to our channel, add some comments on who you think we might trade, speculate around people's livelihoods, as Giz says. And we'll see what happens. Maybe we have Dumba by the time, maybe Dumba gets traded by the time the deadline comes around, but who knows? Anyways, follow Hot Dish Sports anywhere you can find us, and go wild.